Raise your hand if you're not real. I raise my hand, but you should as well, because there are 3 reasons that literally determine where you will end up in life. And well, hold up, because I will also give you the 2 solutions, 2 steps that you have to follow if you want to take control of it. I will tell you why you are supposed to not be real. You're not born, as people say, tabula rasa, blank suddenly with personality, habits. Instead, you have, first of all, you have biology. Genetics and early development determine main baseline traits like energy levels, stress reactivity, how much attention you pay, impulsivity, physical development, and all this stuff. And these traits influence behavior by setting consistent tendencies in how strongly you react to stimuli from reality and how quickly you fatigue or recover. And they're relatively stable in the short term, but change mainly through long-term psychological conditions like sleep, exercise, nutrition, chronic stress exposure as well. And the second one is information environment, I call it, because it includes, of course, parents, family, behavior, education, peers, language exposure, even the media you consume, like this one right now, because it shapes behavior by training what your brain predicts as rewarding or harmful, based on repetition and reinforcement, which I will say it's meaning. Over time, it influences you on what you consider important, what you avoid, what you pursue, and that forms your identity and decision preferences. It also creates this subjective personal narrative. When I say that I was not real, it was because my parents called me after Samuel, but that is a pre-narrative or pre-identity attached to me. I even remember when I wanted to call my current little brother Mary if he was a she, and if he was a he, which he eventually ended up being, Carl. But either way, my parents took control and called him Daniel. I am pretty sure that oftentimes people, they just don't think by themselves at all. So then that was the second one. The third factor is the space, time, and reality around you. I will say that the least biased way of developing yourself and developing other stuff is using the same method that brought man to the moon, that gave you the device you're hearing this right now from, and is through the analysis of the consequences of your actions to now update your expectations and future behavior by formulating what can produce better results and testing it again, which is something you don't even have to do consciously. You have already a big part of your brain that already builds that intuition, and it's something that you are doing every day. You don't have to be like a scientist literally with a lab coat and everything. Look, what happens in your environment is unique to that one. Like, it's pretty different to be born in a freaking war zone than in daddy's mansion, right? The reality you live in also will determine whether you believe what other people say, which is the second factor, or if you try to iterate, evolve, or improve or change a little bit of even the biology that you already have. Because it's trainable. If you want to focus more, if you want to handle more stress, if you want to be emotionally intelligent, it's trainable. Even consciousness itself. So all of these 3 factors are more precisely a collection of synaptic patterns. It's stimuli and having a predetermined reaction. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky called this the origin of cognition because they were absorbed from the people around you, the culture you were born into, the experiences that hit you, before you had the language even to question them. So because you're largely assembled by external forces, you can't innovate if you don't follow 2 things. These are the secrets that I was telling you about. The first one is metacognition, which is simply the part of you that can watch itself think. It's a self-modeling that happens in your brain, and we uniquely call consciousness. That part can rewrite the script of your life because its literal function is self-modeling, self-awareness, and establishing, according to what reality slaps you in the face with, the most precise prediction patterns. Of course, it's a little bit influenced by the wiring that you already have in your brain. I want to make it for another topic, but I want to make it clear that the biggest mistake that people do is that they try to add new habits or start this new thing, but the way they are wired in their brain, the connections they have in their neurons is made to trigger behaviors that are not aligned with the progress they want to make. So when people try to progress, they usually are prone to act in a way they used to act before, but they should not be acting like now. Because what happens is like two people, the more they connect, the more they interact with each other, the bigger their relationship is, like two friends. And just like two friends, they are gonna probably, hey, I want to talk with you. This happened to me. Hey, could you help me with this? Right? Because that's how usually friends behave. That's the same that happens with neurons. And since you were a baby, you are already conditioned because you are born with a lower level of cognition. You were grown with certain patterns, certain little friends in your brain that already communicated to each other and not necessarily are what you want. It will just trigger an automatic past behavior. I would like you to know that all of your goals come from lack, even if artificial or not. That is a belief I have, because even curiosity comes from a drive that only will be gotten if you believe you lack the better solution. I mean, your brain loves to romanticize pain because it feels like progress, even if it might be something like shame or your actual muscle suffering from a marathon or going to the gym. That's why even people achieve everything they wanted and still feel empty, because of something that this guy, Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert, called an effective forecasting, which is simply when your brain is terrible at predicting how you will feel once something changes. So if you never made peace with where you are right now, your nervous system carries that unresolved tension straight into the next chapter. When you spend years in resistance to your current reality, your amygdala, which is one of the brain's threat detectors, stays chronically activated, and it doesn't care that you got the promotion, the money, the pay, whatever, or the man, because it was trained to find danger. So it will keep finding it in the new relationship, the new business, the new body, but it's the same brain. It's only in a different stage, but with the same suffering, which we don't want. So you can set direction in the future, although without stimulating possible outcomes too much, so you don't fall into overthinking. Because whatever happens now becomes past events that you can't control anymore. Because after all, you act on the present, and your past actually defines you in your brain. But you still can rewire it if you make it easy to do what you wished you had done in the past. Like, for example, if your priority, if your focus is getting a good body, then you can make exercise and nutrition and good nutrition the only fun, easy, most accessible, meaningful thing to do, and everything else is just meaningless or too hard and stuff. But the second, I think, is the most important, because you will never know how to use your consciousness well if you don't become a deep thinker. Nowadays, there is so much information using the ideas of others, but it's nothing original. At the end, I mean, it's just something taken from other people. It only becomes something new when you learn independently. That's the secret to become a deep thinker. Because when someone tries to learn something independently, they are, first of all, finding a dot to connect to the previous one. And finding meaning, that is the second one, because they think it will be useful, more applicable, and they are more prone even to get into the flow state. And the third is that they are generating more questions, because the most important part is that when a question is answered, often many others come. We are really curious about that thing, and we dare to keep asking even the origin of the very words we're using. The brain is an organic prediction and self-updating machine. And by training him on how to predict the stuff in the correct way, through meta learning, that is, learning how to learn, you train him to predict stuff without needing somebody else to give you the hints, because your subconscious processes everything at a speed and efficiency you can't imagine precisely. So eventually, when you follow this protocol enough, you will have such a high cognitive level that you will question what you have learned before, and also have certain ideas or questions with more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. And the best is when, because you have already had the knowledge before, now you find a question and you try to search for a more certain spectrum of answers yourself, because you believe that you are worthy, you are confident that you might be capable of answering that question yourself. That is where the motivation, the drive to start something begins. Having a startup or innovating with a personal brand so freaking unique, that only happens with independent thinking. So you're the consciousness that can observe the conditioning of your environment and choose differently by learning from the past, setting goals in the future. One belief you have about yourself, where did it actually come from? Trace it back, you might find that it was never even yours. And so that's that. If you don't know who I am in a mission to decode the universal science of conversions, which I just mean how thoughts become action, prospects become clients, and how chaos becomes systems, while taking coaches from 70-hour work weeks to 35-hour work weeks, while doubling close rates and automating how they get consistent qualified clients. I will be extremely pleased to read all of your comments and hear what pains or beliefs do you think drove or are driving your life and you would like to change. I can even try to connect with you and see if there is any way that I can help. So that's all for this video, and I stand for your best, because only that will matter. Take care.